it has to be right. And when it happens for the person, then special things really begin to happen because the image is coming out of them. I had showed you a picture in our house of a cat named Miracle because a woman was worrying about her cancer, how to treat it. Said, I went to bed, a white cat. And to me, again, that's very symbolic. The white, it's like all the colors can come out of white. It's the purity, the canvas. American Indians, white buffaloes, Buddhists, white elephants. It's symbolic. And this white cat walks up there and says, my name is Miracle, and here's the chemotherapy you should take. Now, you'd say, where does this come from? See, how does this person who has nothing, no medical background, know about chemo? Yeah. But she said, I wrote it all down, told my doctor. And he, which I think was wonderful, he was nice enough to not say, ma'am, you're nuts. He said, fine, we'll do what, you had in your dream. And yes, it cured her. I've met other people who have left their troubles to God and had cancers go away. And again, it's like the still pond. When you find that total peace, your body responds to it. I have had people come into my office say, I'm going to leave my troubles to God. I want you to document my cure. And it's always hard for me to not suggest that, why don't you let me operate and God keep you well? And one woman just became enraged that I would even suggest that and just turned and walked out. And I met her about 6 years later. I mean, I didn't remember her, but she walked up to me after I gave a talk in New York, said, you remember me? I said, you look familiar. She said, I'm that. Because I said to her, it's hard to be a saint. And she said, I'm perfectly well today. And I said, that's wonderful to meet a saint. And because I have to be honest, if somebody said to me, leave your troubles to God, that's not easy. If you got a house, 5 kids, wife, yeah. But yet, when you can achieve that, I think the utter peace, and then your body says, you're loving this experience, and you're totally at peace. Let's do something special for you. Yeah, and it does.
So what would you... So one of the things I hear you saying is that the imagery has to be unique for that individual, and it has to come from them.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be about disease. What job do you want to take? Who do you want to marry? Where do you want to live? See, as Jung said, the future is unconsciously prepared long in advance and therefore can be guessed by clairvoyance. So there is past, present, and future in every picture. I mean, not necessarily in every picture. I mean, it could be now, but there are even spaces on the page that represent present, future, past, and death concept and far future. So I can look at them, it's like the upper left is the far future, okay? The present is the upper right. So if one of our kids says, I don't know where to go to school, and he puts what he puts in the upper left, I say, that's where you ought to go, because that's where you're creating, unconsciously the place. Yeah, and it helps people, as I say, make decisions about jobs and where they're going to live. And I knew a doctor who didn't know who to marry, and he handed me 8 pictures of 8 women. But I wasn't expecting that. But it was very obvious which one was the best connection, and he ended up marrying her, and they're quite happy. Or a medical student who, he said, I don't know what specialty. And he drew oncology, surgery, and family practice. Now, I really think, knowing this kid, sensitive kid, we would have said, oh, go be a family doctor. But the best-looking picture was oncology. But what was more interesting is, in the upper left, which is the far future, he showed his house, wife, and 3 children. After graduation, he gets married, and they're having trouble conceiving. So all kinds of problems. I said, Matt, you're going to have 3 children. Now, whether you adopt them or not, I don't know, but you will have 3 kids. Well, his wife ultimately conceived, and they had 3 children. Now, here's a picture he draws in medical school, with 3 kids in it. And those are not accidents. I have also, as I said, I hear voices. I also have a former patient who's a mystic and brings me messages from the dead. So I know consciousness is non-local. That's the way I put it. I think that what we call past lives means that I, you, others are impregnated with consciousness that has preceded us. So when a little boy starts his life being interested in airplanes and talks to his parents about this World War II, death of a pilot, and they start looking it up, they realize this kid knows every detail, and when he's shown a picture of the squadron, he names everybody in it. You see. So, now, do I think that boy lived that life? No, but I think it's the consciousness, yeah. So that when she calls me and says, oh, your parents, or patients, and this was fascinating. We had a doctor in our support group, which is rare. And when he died, Monica called me. And she said, Bernie, I have a message from Frank. She doesn't know who she's talking about, okay? I mean, she doesn't even live right near me, but she'll just call up. A message from Frank. If I'd known it this easy, I bought the package a long time ago and not have resisted so much. And I think I put this in one of the books, but I called his wife. I said, here's a message from Frank. And the interesting thing, she always has a name. I mean, she knows the name of the people. I said, here's a message from Frank. If I'd known it was this easy, I'd have bought the package a long time ago and not have resisted so much. And she said, oh my God. I said, what do you mean? Every time we'd leave your meeting, he'd say, I can't buy the package. Yeah. And those are the things that, and one other humorous one, after both of my folks died, Monica called me. And again, she doesn't know, when they die, but she'll call me and say, you folks are together again. And they're being shown around by somebody who likes cigarettes and chocolate. I said, what? She said, oh, it's Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She's showing you folks around. Now, Monica doesn't know, my life in the sense of who I knew, relationships with Elizabeth, things like that. But that's the part, as I say, that, when you have those experiences, or have a blind patient of yours say, I saw what went on when they were resuscitating me, and his wife said to him, honey, you're nuts. No, you have a green dress on and you sat in the corner of the room. Yeah. And there are books about that too. So again, it's trying to get in touch with this greater consciousness and help people heal. I wish someday, well, my feeling is if everybody grew up loved, every child, this whole planet would change, that how we would treat each other would be very different. And we'd raise our level of consciousness and take care of ourselves. Because when I talk about reparenting, the studies that show if you're not loved as a child, you're basically self-destructive. Okay, I always say it's not stupidity that makes people smoke 2 packs a day or be 200 pounds overweight or never exercise and be a drug addict. It's about how they were brought up, and what they're searching for that they never received in a healthy, normal way, all the addictions. But if we're brought up with love, then our disease incidence is literally about 1/4 of those who aren't brought up with love. I can tell you that. See, if you go into an assisted living facility, 80, 90, 100-year-olds, and you say, how many of your parents loved you? Almost every hand goes up. Okay? But go into a high school, you get the opposite reaction. And I've learned that, as I say, to try to bring love into those people's lives and help them. And I may say, in a therapeutic way, to get back to the humor aspect, I had somebody call me up. I was a police surgeon. And he said, I'm going to commit suicide. And he had called my office to tell me I'm committing suicide. I said, Jimmy, you commit suicide, I'll never talk to you again. He showed up in the office about 15 minutes later. Now, this was a former professional football player who I thought was going to throw me out the window because he came crashing into my office. You insensitive, how could you treat me like that? And I said, Jimmy, what? Did you notice something? What? You're not dead. And then he suddenly like, oh, you did that on purpose. You know what I mean? Suddenly he realized, oh, yeah. So I've done many crazy things like that, and in a sense have saved people's lives because they don't expect, a nut to respond to them and to bring out that smile and do that. And another that taught me about love was a boy who had been abused, HIV positive, and called me and said, I'm going to commit suicide. And I said, we'll get a gun and we'll kill your parents. Why should you kill yourself? And he said, no, I never want to be like them. He taught me something. I mean, I thought, where does that ability, I really felt that this kid must have had a past life in which he learned about the importance of love and abuse and all kinds of things. Because, and then the nice thing, see, that are there angels? He went down to commit, as he said, jump in front of the A train, and the train didn't show up. And so he called the suicide hotline, which was literally on the wall. This was in New York, all the cards that are in the station. And he called the hotline, and they came and loved him. And I'm not sure that there aren't angels, because I have come close to dying 4 times and walked away fine. I mean, choking as a kid. See, I left my body, and I was mad as hell. I mean, this sounds crazy, I know, that I didn't die, because it was so much more interesting to be out of my body and not have the pain of choking and unable to breathe. And you also identify with that consciousness. I didn't identify with the kid on the bed. See, he was dying now. I'm okay. And then when I didn't die, I was mad as hell, yelling, who did that? Because I thought, why isn't my decision, important? But I had a feeling I'm not supposed to die, like God has a schedule.
And you had to go back into that body?
Yeah, it was like a vacuum.
And it was
That's
heavy
the way I
when you went back
felt
into
it, yeah. That when he could breathe again, I just went, there was no choice. The other 2 times were serious auto accidents where people, go through red lights and things and totaled my car. Even before seatbelts, I was thrown out of the car. And the last one I found very interesting. When you talk about your future, I'm teaching a college class. I said, everybody fill out your death certificate. It's a state certificate. They were all dead in their 50s. It blew my mind to think these kids, that they're not writing 100, something like. I wrote, age 98, falls off the roof with the family yelling, you shouldn't be up there at your age doing. Well, but what do you think happened 6 months later?
You fell off the roof.
Yeah, the ladder that I had put against the roof, the top rung broke. So when I stepped off, it snapped off. Now, the thing that made me a believer in a sense was that I landed on my feet. See, the ladder's like this. If this rung breaks, how the hell do you land over there? I have no explanation. Now, when I landed, I was tense. So I did fall over and give my head a bump, okay? But nothing, serious. And I was telling the story one night, and I said, I must have an angel, because I have no explanation for, it's like somebody took me and put me down. And a guy came up and said, you have an angel. I said, really? He said, yeah, I know his name. I said, what's his name? He said, what did you say when the ladder broke? I said, oh, shit. He said, that's his name. And that man, I just wish I could trace him and thank him, because think about this. Every time something goes wrong, I'll yell out, oh, shit, and then start laughing. See?
Yeah.
And it has kept me from further injuries. I was riding my bike, make a sharp turn. It's a sheet of ice. I go flying through the air. What do I yell? Oh, shit. And I hit the ground laughing. And I was so relaxed, I literally didn't even have a scrape or a bruise. Because, I was like in another state of consciousness, yeah. I mean, I'm not afraid, worried, tense. Boom. You hit the ground, okay. And so no matter what happens, if I yell that, I find myself smiling. Even if you're stuck in traffic, I'll be late. Oh, shit. Okay, he'll take care of it. And it has happened, too, at times. The traffic will start moving after you get to that state.